Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. All right, folks, I'm Steve Gurney with the Positive Aging Community, and I am thrilled today to be supporting the Purple Heart Foundation in a interactive discussion with some thought leaders. And I am delighted to be co-hosting with Jim Hatch of the Purple Heart Foundation. Jim, thanks for asking me to help with this. This is going to be a great discussion.
Steve, thanks so much for having us. You know, I've been to enough of your events and seen all the work that you do and how proactive you are in helping people understand what options are, and hoping to share a little bit today of kind of the best of the military and things that we're trying to do here at the Purple Heart Foundation.
I love it. And before we meet our guests and dive into this important topic, let's get to know you and Purple Heart Foundation a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Purple Heart Foundation.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. So I've had the honor to grow up in a military family. You know, people always say, wow, that must be difficult moving all around the world. And reality is you don't know any differently. But father and a mother, father being career military, mother being a working spouse, I've tried to take those life lessons of, in Dad's case, you have one name and one reputation in the military, you blow it and it's history. And at the same time, we're going to leave places better than the way we found it. So that military mindset, as much as I did not serve, I have always appreciated and have over the years worked off and on with a lot of different organizations, and just really excited to be at the Purple Heart Foundation and the difference we're trying to make as we're, what you'll hear me say, pivoting the foundation to be relevant to today's transitioning veterans and truly showcase again the best of the military mindset.
I love it. All right. So now's the time where we're going to dive into a conversation and meet some of the panel members that you've put together. Would you like to introduce them and introduce the topic, and we can dive into our conversation?
Sure. Welcome that. I mentioned pivot the foundation. Some of what we're really trying to focus on is certainly that best of best you've heard me make reference to. And in this case, no one does funerals better than the military. And because of that, I've tried to look at some areas of expertise. And this is where I came across Kenny and Mike, and separately, and yet now we're kind of all together working on this. In other words, when you look at the military, it really is about pre-planning and about celebration of life. And when we look at those areas and saying no one does it better, you know, in fairness, military and first responders on almost day one, let it be known what their last wishes would be. And Kenny and Mike and I have talked about this. It probably is the kindest thing, and I know you've been good to promote this to your listeners as well, but it's the kindest thing you'll ever do for your family. And because of that, we also know celebration of life is one of the newer trends. I think Kenny and Mike are going to talk a little bit about the green burial side as some additional trends and things that are taking place. But the goal here for us at the foundation is to take America's oldest medal, dating back to, of course, George Washington. And what was unique with that medal is he gave it to all veterans or all active duty. So it wasn't just officers. And the fact that the medal was changed to combat wounded soldiers after World War I, where MacArthur was the one to repurpose the medal, what was known as the Purple Merit Badge, now the military order of the Purple Heart. So these are some things that, in talking with Kenny and his background, helping to transition veterans out of the military and into the commercial sector, and for Mike and Mike's expertise in working with the VA to actually, in the state of Virginia, 3 VA cemeteries that Mike helped to manage, To see how Kenny and Mike are working together to create this knowledge and resource is a tremendous opportunity for us and an opportunity to hopefully use that mentorship to help others look at pre-planning and this celebration that we're talking to. What's really empowering, and I'm going to toss this to Kenny if I can, and to Mike, based on what they're doing, they're using what they know in their time in the military to actually create ways that others will have it easier. So this is why transitioning veterans into the commercial workforce and being attuned to the things that are taking place on the commercial sector and on the veteran side, I think is a powerful combination to be able to talk about. So with that, Kenny, I'd love you to introduce yourself, and Mike, just to be able to give us more input on the work that you're doing and how that impact is impacting all of us.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Jim, for that introduction. And Steve, thank you so much for having us on your podcast today. We're incredibly humbled and grateful for the opportunity. And so, like Jim said, my name's Kenny. I'm the founder of Sunbeam 369. Our mission is to help attract, train, and retain veterans in the death care industry. One of the reasons why we think this is so important is having veterans talk to veterans about pre-planning is incredibly helpful, right? It's about instant trust and credibility. And we know that the industry hasn't always had the best reputation, right? And I know there's been a lot of efforts that to overcome that. We believe that veterans do this better than anyone. And Mike can talk about this from his background for doing mortuary affairs for 25 years. Just a little background on myself. I went and served for 6 years. I did my undergrad at West Point, and I served 6 years as a field artillery officer. I am a board member of the Purple Heart Foundation. I was wounded in battle at a small outpost called Camp Keating. And that was kind of my first experience in like, whoa, like life is, ephemeral, right? Like it can end. And it gave me this more relationship with death, quite frankly. It wasn't until I worked in the corporate sector for a number of years and really started to realize that the passion that I had for the work that I was doing wasn't there. And so when I moved to Hawaii, I worked at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, and I worked as a front desk, and I helped talk to families about their loved ones, help them understand how to navigate the National Cemetery Administration. And at that point, I realized that veterans working in this industry can have a substantial impact. And so that's when I founded Sunbeam 369 to help veterans transition into the industry, be trained so they can deliver value day one, and then help them be retained in that business. And so that's what we're doing with Sunbeam 369. My role is to kind of manage that. I'll pass it to Mike just to talk a little bit about his background and his role with the company.
Hi everybody. Yeah, I'm Mike Henshaw. I'm with Sunbeam 369. I've been with the company for a couple months now. We're up and coming. We're doing our best in the field in a couple areas, trying to get talent from the military into the death care profession industry, and also trying to get the word out about death and funeral and burial benefits, which is really hard, but we've got a good plan. My background is Army mortuary affairs. I retired from the Army in 2009. My main job was MIA search and recovery, Vietnam, World War II, Korea, and that's actually what I'm doing now. I'm over in Laos, helping a family right now. But my expertise after that became cemeteries, national cemeteries. I was a national cemetery director. I was director of state veteran cemeteries for Virginia, and I dealt with a lot of funeral homes and people in the death care industry, and learn the need of knowledge in order to talk to our veterans at the time of need, or especially during pre-need. There's a lot of benefits out there, and the information about how you apply for those benefits, how to talk to veterans, how to do veteran outreach, and get the word out has really been lacking. So I think between Kenny and Jim and I, we've come up with a solid plan to try to get military into the death care profession, and also to get the word out through the Sunbeam 369 Institute.
Wow, this is an amazing program. We're helping people better understand their benefits as a veteran and doing pre-planning but what I love is the career opportunity that's out there too, for the veterans. This is really, really a great program, guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? And so, like, when you're serving in the military, right, you're doing something with purpose, right? It's mission oriented, it's altruistic. But when soldiers leave the military, oftentimes trying to find that passion and that purpose can be lacking. And so, so many soldiers leave the military, they don't know what to do. And so, we're trying to help educate more soldiers and veterans about here's an industry that you haven't thought much about. However, it doesn't matter which county, which town, which city, which state, what region of the country, there is a funeral service provider there, right? And so another thing is we often know that military spouses travel, and Jim mentioned it in his intro, moving all over the country. We know that military spouses lose so much income and earning potential with every move, right? When soldiers are moving every 3 years, right? And so time and time again, I hear, oh, like, what should I be doing? Well, this is another profession, not only for veterans, but for military spouses. And so we think the helping veterans transition into this industry is incredibly important. The one other thing that I'll add, just so that your listeners know, there's over 200,000 veterans that transition out of the military every year, right? There's 6 million Vietnam era veterans that are in the country. And so these folks need to be planning. And so what we're trying to do is match, right? We have veterans working in the industry that are talking to veterans about pre-planning. And that's an incredibly powerful message.
I love it. Now, does your organization works with the industry? So you would be talking to funeral homes and cemeteries and all kinds of end of life providers on the value of hiring these trained veterans. Am I getting this correct?
That's exactly right. So we almost think of it like train the trainer, right? So if the funeral service provider, the professionals that work in this industry better understand veteran benefits, they understand how to articulate a message to those veterans, then they can carry that message way better than we can. So yes, our primary target and who we like to talk to are the professionals that work in this industry. However, we're talking with veterans all the time, right? So regardless if it's a veteran trying to transition, us talking to a provider, or talking to an individual veteran or their family members about their benefits, that's all the mission, right? Because we want to make sure that veterans are being taken care of. They've served our country so well, they should be served at their final time.
And can you give us sort of a brief overview of what the training looks like? So if a veteran comes to you and says, hey, this is an interesting career path for me that I've never thought about, and they sign on with your program, what does that look like? How long does it take and what's involved?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so I'll answer part of it and then I'll pass it to Mike about there is a large portion of the military that are already trained mortuary affairs soldiers. And so I'll pass that to Mike in just 1 second. But in terms of what that training looks like, it's bespoke, right? So it really depends on what the funeral home or the cemetery needs. And so one thing that I faced when I transitioned out of the military, despite being, West Point grad and having an MBA and doing all these other things, when I got dropped into a company, I didn't know how to operate in a company, right? I'd been serving the country for, 6 years, and I went to military college. And so there was no clear onboarding plan. There was no, hey, here's the mission. This is what success looks like. So when we talk with funeral service providers, it's first understanding where are the gaps in your organization? Where are your challenges today? And now let's build a job that actually solves a problem. And then with that, let's build a solid onboarding plan, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 12 months, whether it's 18 months, whether it's 24 months, depending on the complexity of the role. Let's be really clear on what is the mission, right? What are the deliverables? And so now everyone's expectations are managed. When we see that, everybody wins. The soldier is more likely to be retained and the company is happier and they're able to have a better impact. And so that's really what it looks like. And so to say, hey, this is the way that it looks, no, it's not cookie cutter, it's bespoke based off the need of the company. And Mike, could you share briefly just about the 92 Mike and the mortuary affairs soldiers that are already working kind of in the industry?
Sure. 92 Mike, MOS, military occupational specialty, is a mortuary affairs specialist. So there are about 550 active duty and reserve mortuary affairs specialists in the military. They're all enlisted. Their main function is to perform combat search, recovery, tentative identification, evacuation of remains during combat situations. But in between combat, they work in a multitude of different areas, directly with families. They work with military units, training the military how to conduct their battlefield operations for search, recovery, and evacuation of all the remains in their area operations. They deal with the casualty office. So a lot of their extra duty is going to be working in the casualty office, dealing with dependents and survivors of active duty personnel who pass away and reservists. So they have that knowledge, internal knowledge, and they have the skill set of being able to deal with veterans' families. And so not just that, and even if they're not mortuary affairs, it could be any MOS that's part of the military. They bring a special skill set with them. They bring a discipline, they bring work ethic, they bring leadership, they bring a diverse background, and they bring a drive to succeed. So they're coming out of the military. They want to do something to make their life better and to make a career. And we're offering them the opportunity to get into the death care industry because a lot of people just don't think about that. Mortuary affairs soldiers do, and they're a lot easier. But we're also targeting senior NCOs and officers coming out of the military from other MOSs. So it's a great program. It's going to help the funeral industry. It's going to help the cemetery industry. Myself, 92 Mike, I retired 16 years ago. I stayed in the mortuary affairs business. I do what I know, MIA search and recovery, cemeteries, and now working with Kenny and Jim on this special project. But yeah, there's a wealth of opportunity out there and a wealth of knowledge that we just need to get them connected with the right people on the civilian side.
And Steve, I may jump in here if I can. Here's what I hope you're hearing. When we think of our military, the crazy part is for every one soldier with a gun, there's 10 to 15 soldiers behind that soldier supporting those efforts, right? Whether it's healthcare or logistics or all of the things that are, again, think of what the military has done to create those advances in the commercial marketplace. These topics and these discussions that Kenny and Mike have been having every day are things that we feel like affect the military family. Because as much as that mother or father have served, and just on the Purple Heart note, there are over 1,000 women that are Purple Heart recipients. So this is something that we're looking at of supporting the family. And certainly we know the incomes and the training and all of these things. We're looking to use this as, again, this mentorship that I talk about, because it does impact all of our lives. Right? Even if that Vietnam veteran, which based on Kenny's statistics and the number of Vietnam veterans that are passing, it's typically the spouse or a child that's going to be handling those affairs. And if they didn't grow up in that environment, what about the headstone? What about the pre-planning and all of these things that need to take place? This is why the green burial side, just on that note, I go to the Pentagon once a quarter to get to meet with some of the VSO leadership that's out there. And when they talk about green burials right now, there are 3 cemeteries, and Mike can talk more specifically, but that are piloting right now green burials. Not because they're thinking we may do this. They know they need to do this because of the number of square footage that's available in the future and other ways that they can honor veterans that are giving back. And we're finding not putting concrete and plastic, and it's not resonating with today's younger population, right? They want to know things are going back into nature, or that the cremation and their last wishes are taken care of, and that party is going to take place to celebrate life. So this is why, as much as some of the people don't want to talk about it, you've done a great job with other guests about death decks and other things that you've talked about that help me go, wow, there there is a lot of misconception. There are people that don't think about the industry and providing for their families. And Kenny and Mike being able to work with those veterans and the businesses, because a lot of the businesses don't know benefits that veterans can have. And they can talk more specifically about housing allowances or additional education. All of these are positive ways that it's not just the veteran, it's their families and it's the communities at large. So we are grateful to have this conversation on behalf of the foundation, and grateful to have the partners with you and with Kenny and Mike on this as well. So maybe at that point, gentlemen, can you talk a little bit about the green burial side of this for a minute?
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that. Mike and Jim, you were just alluding to it. Talking about death and end of life is one of the hardest things for folks to do. And whenever we're in this space, whether we're trying to recruit somebody to think about this as a career option or just get them to make some plans, for the general population is very hard to talk or think about these things.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Just to have the conversation. Absolutely.
But yeah, I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about the green burial movement.
Yeah, I'll start, and then Mike, if you've got any other additional points. Jim, you mentioned, and Steve, you were just talking about it too, around pre-planning, and having a difficult conversation about that. One of the things that we like to tell any veteran is, you can pre-plan relatively simply by going to the National Cemetery Administration's website. Why that's important is you need your discharge paperwork, and oftentimes this can be a challenging thing for a family member to try to figure out where their discharge paperwork DD-214 is, right? And so doing it early makes a lot of sense. The other thing is when you do that, you actually get to select what cemetery you want to be at. And so like Jim mentioned, there are three green cemeteries, there are three pilot areas where the National Cemetery Administration is piloting green burial in Florida, in Colorado, and in Arizona. And we see that there was an interesting Stars and Stripes article that was written right at the end of 2024. And they said the majority of younger veterans are interested in this practice. And so green burial, like Jim was mentioning, it's not using embalming fluid, or at least Green Burial Council certified products. It's not using cement vaults or liners, biodegradable caskets, etc. And oftentimes people think about green burial like, okay, this is like some hippy dippy thing, right? And it's more than that. From a therapeutic standpoint, one thing about green burial is oftentimes it's the simplicity of it. The family can even be involved with the wrapping of their deceased, their loved one, in the shroud. Also digging the grave itself, lowering the body into the ground. There's a large body of research that would suggest that actually being engaged in that process gives the family agency and also can help with the transition, right? Also in green burial, we know that being in nature reduces cortisol. And so there are a number of other benefits than just the nature thing, but also the simplicity and cost, right? And so typically the cost of green burial is less. And looking at all of the burial options is something that we think is really important. I think, Mike, you can mention some of the things around burial benefits, some of the forms and how that worked. Because as we think about cost, whether it's for a traditional cemetery, a traditional service, or a green service, these burial benefits often go unused. And if Mike, if you can touch on that, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, sure, Kenny. Yeah, death and burial benefits are varied, and they come from a lot of different sources. Mainly from the VA, the Department of Veteran Affairs, Veterans Benefit Administration, the VBA, administers most death benefits for veterans, such as the headstone plot allowance, the headstone transportation allowance, the death indemnity clause. There's a lot of benefits out there, and the National Cemetery Administration administers some of them. For green burial options, the National Cemetery Administration has and is making an effort along with the grant cemeteries to offer different types of green burial options. So there are three cemeteries, national cemeteries, that are trying this, but it behooves anybody that's interested in some type of green burial at a VA or a state veteran cemetery to reach out to their local state or veteran cemetery or state or local federal veteran cemetery and ask them about the green burial options, because a lot of people don't understand that these cemeteries are very flexible and they offer a lot of different options at the time of need for veterans and their families. So you don't have to have a casket at most of these cemeteries. You don't have to have an outer burial receptacle at most of these cemeteries. A lot of the cemeteries have scatter gardens, and that's not part of their green burial program. So, for example, one of my cemeteries out in Southwest Virginia, the Southwest Virginia Veterans Cemetery, is they have a scatter garden. It's been there since 2011. It's never been used. It's never
Now,
been used. We can't get the word out to the local public that it's there, and people don't just stop by and see the cemetery. So trying to get the word out to people that, hey, when you're driving by the interstate and you see that sign that says State Veteran Cemetery or National Cemetery, take 5 minutes and stop in there and talk to them about what they have to offer. And so green burials, it does save money. It helps the planet. It's a very up and coming topic with especially younger veterans. And there are a lot of options out there. So the National Cemetery Administration and the VBA and the states offer lots of veterans. And death and burial benefits are actually the most underutilized veteran benefits there are. I think a lot of the money that's offered by the federal government and by the state for veterans at their time of need goes unclaimed. And so what we want to do is also try to help get the word out to the funeral care, death care industry and to veterans that, hey, these benefits are out there. You know, this can take a big chunk off of your final bill at your funeral home or your cemetery. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And there's a lot of stuff. There's so much benefits. I really on this program don't even want to get into them because I'd be here all day.
well, we're going to have you both back because and maybe dive into some of the details of what those veterans benefits look like. But Mike, you had mentioned uh, uh, something that I'd never heard of before, and did you say it's a scatter garden?
Yes, a lot of the VA national cemeteries have set aside areas, sections in their cemetery that are I don't want to say unkept, but they're natural. So there's no headstones, there's no markers out there, there's no grass. Typically, it's trees and winding paths and benches, and you pick a nice spot along there to scatter the remains of your loved one, and then they can be memorialized on one common wall. Usually, it's at the entrance of the path to the scatter garden, and it shows the names and the ranks of everybody that was scattered in there. So it's really a nice option, and it's out there in more cemeteries than people really realize.
I love it. I'd never heard of that. I think it's a wonderful way for folks to think about memorializing themselves or their loved ones. So, man, we've really covered a lot of great information today. As we had said, we need to do this again and dive into a few of the rabbit holes that we discussed. But is there anything that any of you would like to share that may have not? I know we'll definitely reference in the show notes purpleheartfoundation.org and sunbeam369.com, but and many other resources. But now's our chance to kind of tie this up and share anything that maybe we missed today.
Kenny and Mike, you want to take the lead? Happy to chime in as well. But
Kenny, you want me to talk about our initiative with the Institute?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So one of the things Sunbeam 369 is working on is the creation of the Sunbeam 369 Institute. So our goal there, our flagship premier product is going to be a training package that goes out to cemetery personnel, funeral home personnel, veteran service organizations, and anybody really that deals with veterans and their families about the topic of death and dying, burial benefits, and things like that. So we're putting together a 2-day course. It's going to be a certification to get people in the death care industry certified as a Veterans Burial Benefits Specialist, VBBS. It's going to be the premier training. We've already got the training put together. We're going to launch it at the ICCFA conference in Vegas here the 1st of May, and we're really going to do our best to get the word out to the funeral homes and the cemeteries about what all is out there. Because even myself, coming from a national cemetery, be a national cemetery director, state director, I didn't know until we started putting this course together that some of these were out there. It changes so much. The benefits for veterans and their families at the time of need and afterwards, especially survivor benefits, it changes all the time. So there was a great need to go out and to certify people to be able to interact with veterans, to make sure that they don't leave that money on the table, and so that's what we're going to do, and it's going to be great, and that way everybody will be up to date on every time something changes, a new benefit comes around, and a lot of people don't even realize about the plot allowance. So if you decide not to be buried, which more than 80% of veterans and their families decide not to be buried in state and national cemeteries, there's a plot allowance of nearly $1,000. That goes up every year. It's adjusted on the CDP. So there's a lot of those that are out there, and we're going to get the word out.
Yeah, no, and thanks, Mike, for teeing that up. Yeah, so we're super excited about Sunbeam 369 Institute and the education that we're going to be bringing to funeral service providers. And so, yeah, we're going to launch it at ICCFA conference or experience is what they're calling it, at the end of April, the beginning of May. If you want to learn more, you can go to our website, write us at info@sunbeam369.com if you're interested about learning more about the Institute. Or if you're a veteran or a family member of a veteran, or if you know a veteran and you need more information about their veteran burial benefits, please feel free to write us at info@sunbeam369.com.
And I guess, Steve, if it's all right, I may try and see if I can put a bow on this a little bit. Here's what I very much appreciate, right? When we look at what we're talking about here at the foundation, I've mentioned the military mentorship. Well, you see it firsthand today. At the same time, when we look at, in the case of Virginia, there's 780,000 veterans that have retired and live in the area, thanks to some of the work that the Virginia Department of Veteran Services does to try and track and know what those veterans' areas of interest or needs are. Because of that, DC, or the Virginia area, certainly is one of the top 5 in the country of where veterans continue to be. And this is why we think it's not just the veterans, right? It is the veterans that then go on to serve a second career. And in a lot of cases, this is why this topic is certainly one that we know is inevitable, and why we at the foundation are pivoting to make sure that we're trying to help to educate people on a better way. And this pre-planning, this celebration of life, this continuing to support your family and open it up to the commercial sector is, to me, extremely empowering. And this is where all of your events, Steve, the things that you do, you're educating, you're hands-on with people, helping them in the positive aging side. And certainly we'd like to do more of those things. And that said, it's the partnerships that really help to make it work. We're doing things with veterans and music, and most people have no idea that the largest employer of musicians in the world is the U.S. military, and they're some of the best in the world. So these are the things that with Kenny and Mike and the mindset at the foundation, again, we're pivoting to be pertinent to today's transitioning veterans in the commercial market. And if we can help to partner and be a part of things in the future, we are all ears to make that happen. So thank you for such a great opportunity to reach and be a part of the things that you're doing, Steve, because I know with your role in the community, it makes a huge difference. So thank you.
Oh yeah, and I'm really happy to help get the word out about these great programs, and this is absolutely amazing. Career opportunities for our military, and helping people plan ahead to minimize the trauma that their families may go through at end of life. This is wonderful. Well, I really want to thank you all for today. I really gained a lot of insight, and I know those that are going to be listening to this are as well. So I'll look forward to the next time, and we need a next time because there's lots more information to share. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thanks so much, Steve.